Good evening, and welcome to Your Right to Know by the Fitchburg Republican City Committee. My name is Mary Lotze, and I will be your co-host for this evening's show. Sharing co-host duties with me tonight is my friend and member of the Fitchburg Republican City Committee, Kathy Goguen. And tonight we're here with two very special guests, and our topic is going to be winning and winning strategies for the Republican Party. I'd like to introduce first my very good friend, Justin Brooks. Justin's from Leominster. Justin was the campaign coordinator for a successful bid by Jen Casey on the Governor's Council. Justin's a member of the Leominster Republican City Committee. Justin was a candidate for the 4th Worcester District in November of 2012. And Justin is Joyce and my partner in crime, along with David Martinez on the radio show once a month, WPKZ. Richard, another one of our very good friends of the Fitchburg Republican City Committee. Richard is the current chair of the Gardner Republican City Committee. Richard was the former Mass State Rep for the 2nd Worcester District, and Richard is currently a council, you're running for Gardner School Committee. Thank you, I'm sorry, I got that mixed up. And you're also a school teacher at the high school level in Gardner, correct? Well, welcome all to the show. Kathy and I are in red because, of course, this is a seasonal show that we're going to be having shortly, and we wish everyone out there in our viewing happy holidays. While we get started tonight, I want to jump in on winning strategies for Republicans. Justin and Richard, you're both young Republicans. Republicans right now, and actually over the last several years, probably since George Bush, have really been taking a hit, a very bad knock as to our message, as to what we stand for, what our purposes and goals are. We're being marginalized at every opportunity. As young Republicans, and young Republicans who are willing to stand up and say, I am a Republican and I'm proud of it, why are you still in the Republican Party, and what is it about the Republican message that you're proud of, that you're willing to stand up and proclaim yourself as Republicans? I'm throwing it out to you.
I'll let you take that.
Oh, sure. Well, you know, my family grew up in Fitchburg, right on Water Street, actually down on Albee Street, and that's where I grew up, and they taught me the value of hard work. There were a lot of years that, you know, Christmases weren't that great because my parents were struggling to pay the bills, and sometimes we didn't take vacations, but you know, they made things work, and they taught me, you know, that we need to buckle our belts sometimes and batten down the hatches, but we make do with what we have. And that's one of the reasons why I am a Republican. You know, my family couldn't afford to send me to college, so I joined the Navy. And I think that we need to, you know, continue to go out and show people that, you know, if you're a person that wants to, you know, enjoys freedom and enjoys liberty and wants to, you know, provide a better education for your children and a better future, that you should become a member of the Republican Party.
Yeah, my background, you know, I was an Eagle Scout in Troop 11 Leominster, and you know, you learned a lot of patriotism and, you know, where this country has come from, and you know, that transcended into being a history major in college, where I started to learn, like, hey, how this country was founded upon. And you know, you kind of look at the trend, and it's a lot of giving of oneself, a lot of self-sacrifice for a better future. But right now it seems like a lot of stuff or a lot of people are very isocentric and doing what's best for them without looking at the bigger picture. I think a lot of the Republican, or at least the Republican Party, can actually see the forest from the trees, you know, when it comes to spending or you know, any sort of thing like that, where it's like, okay, we can't keep going down this road, and if we do, we're going to be in big trouble, so we need to do something now. And that's the big reason of why I'm here, you know, and why I'm sticking with the Republican Party, because you know what, at the end of the day, they have the good message. They have the plan that I think is going to, you know, save our country in the long run. You know, might not be palatable now, but at the same time, you know, for long-term repercussions, I think it's a better plan ahead.
So, you're Republicans in a blue state, and there's like 20 Republicans in the state house or something like that. So if you have all these Democrats making laws, raising taxes, giving away free stuff, how does the Republican message get out to people that we have a better product, we have a better future for people than the giveaways and the high taxes.
Take this one first there.
Well, I mean, a lot of it, I mean, when you look at I'm not sure about you, Rich, when you were there, but I'm sure you probably saw a lot of people, a lot of legislation coming down. It seems like a great deal, a great bargain for a city or a great bargain for the community, but at the same time, it's like they position themselves to have to give those handouts. So now the city, the people, the town, have to become dependent on government. And that's a huge issue right now. Instead of creating a lower, an affordable playing field for everybody, it's like we can't do what we need to do as a community unless we rely on government. And what the politicians are very savvy about doing is knowing full well that, hey, if I'm going to be the one heralding this in,
But they want you to be dependent on them.
That's exactly what it is.
So how do you get the message across that that's really not a healthy way to be, and that you can't rely on government? It's hard work, and it's using
discipline
it's
involved,
using
a
your
self-discipline.
imagination. When you keep taking from the government, they pretty much own you, and you lose all initiative.
What we need to show people, and this is going to involve going door to door and really educating voters, is just reminding them that nothing is free in life. Somebody pays for something. Recently, this past year, they voted to raise the gas tax. So every single person that gets up at 6 o'clock in the morning and drives to work, takes their kids to school, they're paying for more money to the state. And none of that money is actually coming back to Fitchburg or Gardner or Leominster. 90% of the roads in Massachusetts are maintained by cities and towns. Yet not one dime of that gas tax hike is going to cities and towns.
No,
it's all going to Boston.
To what?
The
Extend the blue line or the green line
or
or
the
whatever
highway
line
out
they
west
have.
or something.
What we need as a party to do is that when people look out at their roads and see that their roads are littered with potholes and that their children aren't getting a good education, that it's not the Republican Party that's at fault with it. We've had a Democratic governor for 6 years, almost 7 years now. We've had a Massachusetts legislature dominated by Democrats for 58 years. It's not the Republicans that are causing these problems. It is the Democratic Party that hasn't done their job over the last 60 years.
Interesting about when you talked about the gas tax that went into effect last summer, and I was in a standout with you, Richard, out in Gardner. But it's very interesting because I've been walking around and going around with these repeal the gas tax petition. And I happened to be with a group of people this past weekend educating and getting the signatures for this petition. I couldn't tell you how many people came up. They did not know what the petition was about. They didn't even understand that their gas taxes were raised. Yeah. And they throw up their hand and they say, well, they're always being raised. Almost like, so what's new? So it's what I'm saying is it's a hard message to get out.
It's a bit like Stockholm Syndrome in Massachusetts if you're a taxpayer, that you have been conditioned over the years to just accept that government is going to just keep raising your taxes. You're going to get less back in services. Government, we continue to see more and more elected officials indicted, and that's just the way things are in Massachusetts. Instead of saying, you know what, we deserve better. We deserve a better form of government. We deserve better representation. And the way to do that is to elect more Republicans, both at the local level and at the state level. Because let's face it, if in 60 years they haven't fixed it, why would we give somebody else 2 more years or 4 more years?
That's always baffling to me. And we saw it in this recent election in the end of June where we had Ed Markey and we had young Gabriel Gomez. Now, people could argue that Gabriel Gomez may not have been as conservative as some people wanted. He was a little bit of an unknown candidate. However, he did have an exemplary personal history and educational history and successful professional career. And yet, people went and not reelected, but they brought Markey forward into the Senate. It was well known that Markey was nothing but a warm seat holder for the last 30 years in the U.S. House of Representatives.
I don't think it was known. People don't know what goes on in Washington.
You could be right on that one.
They recognize the name. Oh, I know that name.
Well,
he's a Democrat. They vote. They look for the D, and they vote.
And sometimes it's the not in my backyard type mentality, where if you look at the favorable rating of our legislature, it's usually really low. I mean, it's in like the teens, and it's like, oh, okay, well, it's time for change. People are going to vote. But it's like, yeah, the legislature's doing something wrong, but, you know, I met that guy somewhere, and, you know, I don't mind him. You know, I'd vote for him. And it's almost like the local politicians that you ran into is, you know, that's the people that you kind of, okay, well, not in my backyard. However, the whole thing is that opportunity for future candidates, however it may, whether it be especially at the local, but, you know, moving it up to the state, is you have to meet the people. Once you start to meet the people, you start to get in front of them, then they have that same thing, like, hey, that's a good guy. I'll give that guy a chance. And then sometimes it's a lot longer than like Gabriel Gomez had. It was almost like,
he only
bam,
had, what,
you know?
5 or 6 weeks altogether, right?
If you look at what the Democratic Party has done over the last 6 years, they have built the farm team up. They recruit people to run for school committee, planning boards, et cetera. Then those people gain some experience. They gain a fan base or electoral base. Then they run for city council. Then once they do that, they run for rep, they run for Senate. So by the time they get to running for Congress, they've established both a record and a large group of people that are willing to follow them and vote for them. And what we have as Republicans a lot is, unfortunately, we're not going to have, you know, a Republican parachute in here like, you know, Elizabeth Warren did when she came in. You know, people are not coming here as Republicans to pick up the flag and fight the fight. We have to do it. We have to build from within. And, you know, we need to really get out there and talk to people that are young, that are, you know, interested in not having tremendous amounts of debt put on them for the rest of their lives, and say, if, you know, if you want to change this, then we need to have you, you know, help out.
Well, the debt that our college children are going to come out of college with is a travesty. I mean, that in itself is criminal of what's happening. And how do we, so let me ask you this, how do we get young people involved? You are young men. You have been Republicans since you were of voting age. You came from Republican households. How do we start turning around young college-age students that think life is always going to be handed to them, it's always going to be easy? How do we start getting them to understand that there is another message, a better message out there for them?
Sure, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of hope for, you know, the college-age kids. I mean, I think the problem with the Republican Party is they've given it like, oh, they're young. It's a foregone conclusion that they're going to be the ones that are going to be voting with the Democrats. When you look at how it's been, it's kind of like the baby boom generation, and then, you know, and then a little bit after that, that's when it's really started to nurture within the education system. But right now, from a lot of the youth that I've seen, they've either given up or they've actually been open-minded enough to like kind of look at like, hey, you know what, we really kind of do need to do something, whatever it is. You know, they're very big on volunteering. They're very big on the environment, which are things that, you know what, at the end of the day, the Republican Party needs to refine their messaging a little bit. You know, you can't just say like, oh, this global warming's like not even true. It's like, yeah, you know, we do need to do things for the environment, you know, whatever that may be, and kind of refine that message to the youth. But at the same time, they're cognizant of what's going on, and either that or they've given up. And I've seen a lot of youth that, you know what, they don't care. They've kind of pulled themselves out of it, and they've actually gotten to the point where they're like, I don't care. You know, I'm just gonna, you know, I'm gonna spend and do whatever because, you know what, that future is not gonna be there for me. That Social Security, you know, I can't even count on that. You know?
I think you see a large difference too between the trust fund kids from Wellesley and Cambridge and Amherst that have had everything provided for them, and, you know, and children that are from working class backgrounds, you know, in Fitchburg and Gardner and Leominster and northern Worcester County, who understand, you know, they see their parents having to work 2 jobs. You know, when you talk to teenagers, the unemployment rate among teenagers right now is 16%. They can't find jobs themselves. 1/3 of all kids that graduate schools don't even have the basic skills to go to college anymore, or they don't have a trade when they graduate. That's criminal. And again, going back to the plan that's been offered for the last 60 years, clearly we're letting our younger generation down. We're not educating them. We're not putting them in a position to get jobs. And I think they understand that more than I think some people give them credit for. They're slowly coming around on it. They're understanding that, you know, what they've been told by their parents and their grandparents, that the Democratic Party is the party to Kennedy. It's not anymore.
No.
And if they want to get a better job and they want to get ahead in life, they need to take ownership and get involved.
And it's also part of the Republican Party's responsibility to outreach. I mean, because, I mean, to just give up on that demographic is, you know, in my opinion, asinine.
How do we break into the colleges then, the high schools, the colleges?
Is it social media? I mean, the Democrats are big on social media. I mean, that's how Obama won the last 2 elections, is that grassroots getting out the vote thing. How do the Republicans tap into that and get their message out on all the different medias?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you got to look at people like, remember Evan Kenny that was
Sure.
here? He was school committee, I forget which city.
Evan
but-
was partly instrumental in helping us start this show.
Absolutely, but you know that's what we kind of need is we got people there that you know are very aggressive, have a good head on their shoulders, and want to actually do something. I mean, most college kids, you know, they're like you know, just going to school,
party, let's
having
party.
fun. You know, well, I mean, even if they're not partying, they're not have that on the
Yeah.
forefront. But you got people like Evan Kenny, who's just like. You know, he's a go-getter,
Right.
and then you need to capitalize on that, and then put them in positions where you know what they are responsible for the social media stuff. I mean, that's what the Democrats do all the time. You think it's a bunch of the senior class Democrats that are sitting there, tweeting all the time. No, they put the youth in good positions to kind of tackle those type of obstacles or challenges within the organization.
I've had a chance over the last couple of years to work with a lot of members of the Masters Young Republicans and the Masters College Republicans, and they're really focused on just spreading the message within their own campuses, because like with anything, I can run into a kid from Fitchburg State in Mount Wachusett and tell them they should become a Republican, and whether they're a Democrat or Republican, all right, they're probably going to tune me out. But if their roommate tells them, hey, I'm going to something this evening, the Republican Party is going to have a candidate for rep or something coming down, they're more likely to get involved. And what we really need to do is we need to work, build up that relationship with our colleges to have active and vibrant college committees to keep them involved, so that students can have a chance to say, hey, I'm really upset with what's going on out there, and I need to have a forum in which to discuss it with somebody. Because a lot of times when they get home, a lot of their parents have just, over the years, they've just been told that just vote Democrat, don't worry about anything else, and they know that there's something that needs to be done differently.
Well, especially with the youth at this particular time, when they get out of college and graduate, if they find a job, it'll probably be a part-time job. Because we're working now, our employment rate is really based in large part on part-time economy.
75% of all jobs that have been created in this recession have been part-time jobs. In fact, a company that I used to work for 15 years ago, when I worked for them selling auto parts in Leominster, they had 8 full-time employees, 3 part-time employees, and everybody had health care. All the full-time workers had health care. Now, the same company has 3 full-time workers, 8 part-time workers, and none of the part-time workers have health care, and they only get 30 hours a week. So clearly, Obamacare and all of this government stepping in is hurting workers. It's not helping them.
What happened in 2012? We had a good candidate in Mitt Romney. I do believe had Mitt Romney gotten in, our economy would have been starting to turn around now in a very positive and successful way, just because of his own sheer ability and knowledge to turn around economies. Every time he said something, he allowed himself, and I would say he and the Republican Party allowed themselves to be painted as wealthy, white, out of touch, rich people who hated women and certainly wanted sick people and didn't like kids that much either. Certainly didn't like dogs. So, I mean, that was blatant falsifications put out by the Democratic Party.
And the media.
And
You
the
can't
media
do it without
supported
the media.
it. You're right, Kathy. And yet, the Republican Party had nothing.
They didn't fight back.
Didn't
They
come
allowed
back
the
at
Democrats
all.
to
How
identify
do you go
them.
after not only messages that aren't positive, but messages that are absolutely false?
I've often said that the Republican Party always had that issue of branding. I mean, they sit there and let the Democrats brand them before they even brand themselves. And if you don't even have a brand, how are you going to go to market? I mean, it's basic marketing 101. I mean, you really have to have something out there that, I mean, and he had his own gaffes too. I mean, when he was out there saying that,
Sure.
the percentage thing at that dinner with the fundraisers, I mean, that was ridiculous, and at the same time, it shot him in the foot. It basically reinforced a lot of what their branding was.
The stereotypes that were being put out.
And the other thing too is, as much as I liked Mitt Romney's messaging better, I think one of the issues with the Mitt Romney nomination was, we put somebody in there that it seemed like, well, it's his turn now, it's his turn now. And a lot of people are kind of turned off by that. And usually when it is like that, it usually works out unfavorably for the person that's doing that. And that's why I'm kind of interested to see how the Hillary Clinton issue is going to work out, because really, I mean, it's like the Hillary show right now. And usually as I said, usually when it's so much like that, it's her turn, it's her turn, it's her turn.
Yeah.
Usually, if you have a fiery, dynamic candidate on the opposite
You
side,
think people may recoil against?
yeah, because now it's like, hey, this is kind of cool. We got somebody vibrant, who wants the job. It's not like we dubbed this person in charge. You know what I mean? So I think in the next election is going to be way more exciting than the 2012 election.
I think it comes down to this, whether it's branding or messaging, however you need to phrase it, we need to get better at interacting with voters. When you look at whether it was Governor Romney or whether it was Charlie Baker, clearly they had the intellectual knowledge to do a fantastic job. They had the background, they had everything that was there. But one thing they couldn't do is they couldn't connect to voters. And President Obama, for any flaws that we all would think that he has, is a tremendous person at being able to interact with the voters and get them to believe that he has their best interests at heart. Same thing with Governor Patrick. When he ran for re-election, he did a campaign where he kept talking about wanting to give people breathing room and kind of that Clinton-esque, I feel your pain bit. But voters, are emotional. People vote for very different reasons, but they'll vote for the person they think has their best interests at heart. And for the last few elections, we haven't convinced voters that we have their best interests at heart. And we just need to keep showing them, listen, it's not the Republican Party that raised everybody's gas tax and made it more expensive for them. It's not the Republican Party that's failed you on education. We want to come up with a better plan, a different plan, and work with voters on trying to get those plans put in place to change things.
So if Charlie Baker runs in 2014, what advice would you give him?
Several things. Clearly, I think what he needs to do is he's got to get better.
Because he seems like a really nice guy.
He's a wonderful person in a room. He's one of the smartest guys that are there. I think one thing I would tell him is that you can't let them define you like they did. One of the big things that the Democratic Party did is they somehow tried to say that Charlie Baker was responsible for the cost of the big dig, when in fact it was a program that began under Mike Dukakis, his transportation secretary. It was put forward by Tip O'Neill and Ted Kennedy, vetoed by President Reagan, who thought it was going to be way out of control spending, and they pushed it through anyway. And guess what? It was. It's almost like Charlie Baker was the guy who went out to dinner with a bunch of his friends. They all got up and left the table and stuck him with the bill. And then they laughed at him later about how he had to break out the credit card to pay for it. He needs to do a much better job about going on the offensive and saying, listen, I'm not the one that's at fault for the last 6 or 7 years of a bad Democratic administration. I'm not the one that's responsible for 60 years of a Democratic majority in the State House not getting things done. I'm the one that's going to fix things, and here's my plan to do it. That's what he needs to be doing.
And one of my things, and I said this from day one from his previous campaign, was he really needed to show who Charlie Baker was. The problem was that branding, they showed him to be like this, ultra elite guy, worked for Pilgrim Health, was, kind of trying to cut as many people as he could. They basically did all this negative campaigning. When you met Charlie, he was just a pleasurable guy, down to earth,
engaging,
wore jeans, t-shirt, not t-shirt, but the button-down shirt, and he was just
really a nice man.
And that's something that they really need to capitalize on in this election, is to kind of put him down to earth, like who he actually is. I don't know who was in charge of who was his publicist during the last election, but they made sure that he went in there and was more robotic than he needed to be. And they really need to show his personality.
But I also would say this: voters will spot a phony from a mile away. And let's face it, Charlie's a wealthy man, smart man. He looked uncomfortable sometimes wearing jeans and being a bit down to earth. Mitt Romney, when he would try for a more folksy approach, would look out of place. To a certain extent, if you are a rich, wealthy person, go with that image anyway. There's a way to soften that image up, but don't try to pretend to be somebody that you're not either, because voters will see right through that as well.
Yeah, but I think in Charlie's case, he was actually personal. I remember the story when we were outside. We were outside of a festival, and we knew he was coming, and I was working for Jen Casey at the time. He pulls up in his Jeep. All of a sudden, he pulls himself, he rolls the window down, goes out to his waist, and he's a tall guy, so he's just like waving around like, "Hey, Jen, how you doing? Keep up the good work." You know, it's like you could see that was actually his personality, and that's something that he needed to capture. It's not like I'm telling him to do something. I mean, because I don't think Mitt has that in him. I think Charlie does, and that's genuine, and I think that's something that he needs to capture.
You know, oftentimes I've said to the viewers, and I've said anytime I can, people need to go to these meet and greets. When you see the meet and greet at the library or the local club or whatever, VFW picnic or something, go to those, because that is your one perfect opportunity to go up and shake a candidate's hand and ask them your particular question. Just a few weeks ago, I met Charlie Baker, and I walked up and introduced him. He kind of knew me, but I reintroduced myself, and I said, "Would you be willing to be on our show?" He said, "I'd love to." It was as simple as that. Now, this is our Fitchburg Republican City Committee show. We're proud of it, but in the scheme of things, we're small potatoes. It did not matter. He was front and center and willing to do it. Believe it or not, willing to do it, our show has ended. We're ready to wrap it up. We told you it was going to be the fastest half hour on record, and it absolutely is. Again, Kathy and I, with all sincerity, really appreciated this discussion. Justin Brooks, Leominster, Richard Bastien, Gardner. Remember those names at election time? They may be running again sometime. Well, Richard is. And we really appreciate you taking this time out of your evening during the holiday time and coming out and being with us tonight. Kathy, again, you're always front and center with our group and helping us out anytime you can. So thank you all very much. And as we thank you all for watching Your Right to Know, the Fitchburg Republican City Committee, we are your grassroots organization. Every town and city has a Republican Party committee. Please check them out. Go on Facebook. Find where they are. Your Republican committee is your only grassroots organization that supports and holds dear your liberty and your constitutional rights and values. Please check them out and join us. And you know why? Because as the Republican Party, we always stand for freedom. Thank you and good night.
Preserves our rights and goes forth in power and might, that reflects our values and preserves our rights and goes forth in power and might.